Hey everyone, this is Goji Rex with an update video for my overhaul on Godzilla Unleashed. And I'm going to start off by saying that pretty much everything since the last video is different in some way. The game doesn't look anything like it used to, and I've brought tons of new improvements and changes. Starting off with graphics, the base game is very drab and dull and pretty boring. And so in version 1.0, I basically decided to increase the saturation of most of the textures in the game and do not much else. And this was the result. And while it looks better, it doesn't look realistic. So for the next step when it comes to the environments, I decided that to find that happy balance, to where things look vibrant but still look real. I've also modified every single texture in the game. I didn't miss one. And at the very least, I upscaled it, and at the very most, I've completely changed it and remade it from scratch. And as you can see, this is the vanilla Monster Island. This is the one from 1.0, and this is the one now. With all the environments, I really put an emphasis on making everything appear bigger and more like a city and less like a map. And as you can see, there are more windows on buildings. The rocks have finer detail, and the streets have more lanes. And while it may seem like minor changes, it really does make the environments seem more real and bigger. Also, all the fog has pretty much been removed on all the maps, making the visuals more clear. It should be noted that this game is very, very difficult to mod, and increasing saturation or brightness on a map isn't as easy as just one slider or one change. To make New York appear darker, for example, I had to take every single texture in the game and decrease its brightness by 35 in GIMP. On top of that, after I did that, I upscaled and replaced all the textures anyway, so I had to do that all over again. And it was really just a mess. Okay, now onto the monster textures, which is what most people care about, and this is probably the one I spent the most amount of time on, and I felt it was the most important. In the last video, you could see I basically just increased the saturation or changed some of the colors here and there. That was more of just a placeholder for what was to come. If you noticed, most of them kind of looked the same. Now I've completely retextured every monster to be more detailed and as most accurate as I can make them to their film counterparts. But anyway, yeah, here what all the monsters look like now.
Monsters, fight! Monsters, fight! Monsters. Monsters, fight! 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 Monsters, fight!
Shin Godzilla and Godzilla 90's textures were provided by Super Godzilla Gaming, but I modified them quite heavily in my version of the game. Particle effects. So every particle effect in the game was changed, so they aren't as pixelated or blurry or even as big. Explosions have more detail, more animation frames. Shin Godzilla's beam is purple, Mecha Godzilla's beam is rainbow, stuff like that. Again, every texture in the game was improved, and these were not an exception. Critical masses. So every monster in the game now has their own unique critical mass texture. For example, Rodan has Fire Rodan. Shin Godzilla has his atomic breath colors. Ghidorah has Thousand Year Dragon. Mothra Larva's eyes turn red. I think that's funny. Godzilla 2000 is now Burning Godzilla 2000. And most of them, for one I couldn't really think of, they just have the color of their beam for their critical mass, just give their rage a little bit more uniqueness. Water. So the water and the sky were a big challenge for most maps because finding the happy balance between the color of the sky and the color of the ocean was pretty difficult, and one color value can make it look really bad. But what I basically did was make the water pseudo-reflective. And what I mean by that is it's not actually reflective, but it appears to be. So I basically just took the textures of the water and recreated the map on top of it so it appears that the map is being reflected. Like this is what the texture looks like for Monster Island. And this is what it looks like for London. Yeah, it looks kind of stupid, but it looks good in-game. So the crystals. The non-interactive crystals in the game have been removed. And what I mean by that is all of the background crystals, all these huge eyesores, they're gone. And this is a huge deal for me because it really does make the cities feel like actual cities. The crystals to me were an eyesore, and I think everyone can agree with that. And all I did was make the texture invisible. But what I'd like to do is eventually go into the city files and remove the crystals manually. At least from the Brawl versions of the cities. And for the story mode versions, I could leave them in. But for now, the crystals are gone, with the exception of the one that, the ones that actually affect gameplay, like health, energy, power surge, critical mass. They're not affected. But the big-ass eyesores are gone, and I really think the game benefits from it. If you feel differently, if you want crystals in the game, you can have them, and that will be an option in the installer when the game is released. So, menus. I'll make this short because it's not too exciting, but I added a new category in the store called Monster Bios that you can purchase for credits, and it basically gives information on the monster and how it fits in the Unleashed universe. And honestly, I'm not sure why this wasn't a thing in the base game. But yeah, I thought it would just be something neat to add. Controls. They're mostly the same, except I've refined the controls since 1.0, so now that the directional pad on the controller is the motion control directions instead of the C-stick, so that way it's easier to press in combination with A or B when doing a heavy attack. And now there is full range use of a C-stick when aiming your beam. The last version didn't have that. You can only go up and down, so that's also an improvement. Also, if you're using Dolphin, you can just use a keyboard and mouse if you want. It actually works quite well for the game. Okay, music. So in my last video, I showed all the music that was picked for the monster themes, and while most have remained the same, I have changed some stuff. So real quick, Mothra no longer has Monster Zero March, but instead her theme from Tokyo SOS. Monster Zero March was an odd choice, I'll admit that, and I fixed it. Obsidious now has King Kong vs. Godzilla's theme. I'll get to why later in the video. And Kiryu and Mechagodzilla 2 share a theme in the base game, which I hate, so it alternates between their tracks from their respective movies. Here's everyone's theme choices. One thing to note is that Shin Godzilla, Godzilla 90s, and King Caesar don't have themes in the game. Caesar has a theme on the soundtrack, but if you notice, it never actually plays in the game. I have no idea how to fix this, but if I did, that would be a breakthrough, because right now it's completely silent when you play these characters, and it's kind of weird. Also, if I figure out how to make Mecha King Ghidorah's theme separate from the main menu theme, that would be great as well, because the Destroy All Monsters melee theme doesn't fit in combat, but I really want it as the main menu theme because I love it so much. Sound effects. All the custom sound effects were provided by Super Godzilla Gaming. Big thanks to him, because changing the sound effects is so friggin' complicated that it kind of goes over my head. It takes hours in front of Hex Editor, and I just don't have the patience for it, but thankfully he did. Super Godzilla Gaming is a super awesome dude and provided me with the custom sound effects for most of the monsters. They all sound like how they do in the movies now. Here's some examples. While I personally prefer Pipeworks Orga and Destroy Auroras, I do feel it's better for the game to be as accurate as possible. And keep in mind that everything you see here will be customizable in the installer. So if there's something you don't like or something you want to see changed, let me know and I'll do my best to include it as an option. But everything you see here in the video will be the recommended default setting. Which brings me to my last topic, what I have planned for the future. So far, aside from the use of GameCube controllers, almost every change has been superficial. You know, visuals, audio, stuff like that. But here's my plans for future changes. Keep in mind, none of this is guaranteed. I'm not promising anything, because if I knew it was possible, I would have done it by now. But yeah. So, balancing. Aside from a few characters in the game, Unleashed is pretty well balanced, but the few characters that throw it off really throw it off. And I think you know which one in particular I'm talking about. Destroya. Destroya is like Meta Knight on crack. All you have to do is use his horn katana and you'll win every time. It's guaranteed. There's nothing they can do about it. So for Destroya, the horn katana will do less damage. It'll take one energy cell, making it a much more reasonable approach option instead of a crutch. Godzilla 54 and 90s are exact clones. This isn't a secret. So for Shin Godzilla, he will be much larger, slower, but will hit very hard, and his atomic breath will have the ability to break health cells like a heavy attack would. But to balance this all out, he'll lose the ability to sprint and jump, making him a unique character, more like how he was in the movie, making him a powerhouse, and I think that would be awesome. Okay, arguably one of the worst characters in Unleashed is Jet Jaguar. I'm going to increase damage and range on his attacks, which will make his gimmick, changing sizes, not completely useless, because in the base game, it really only makes him worse. Mega Gearus is pretty good, but she can only get energy through crystals. As she starts with none, she can't regenerate it. So having her start with 2 energy cells instead of 0 will make her gimmick not useless. And players will have to manage their energy wisely, making her a much more unique character. For Megalon, while he isn't bad, he isn't what he used to be in Melee and Save the Earth. I'm not sure how I'd be able to implement this, but having him have the ability to dig under and grab opponents again was kind of his bread and butter in Melee and Save the Earth. And having that back here would be much better, because digging is useless. It's useless. If that can't be implemented, however, increased damage, because he kind of sucks. But yeah, Mothra Larva is without a doubt the worst monster in the game. No grab, attacks that barely do any damage, are super slow, and a beam that takes so long to regenerate, it's pretty useless. Basically, the only good move she has is turning into Adult Mothra. So Larva will have increased damage and range with their attacks and faster energy regeneration, and her Silk Beam will actually make the monsters dizzy, like how they used to in the previous games. She'll also be faster, making her a very good character, but she'll lose the ability to jump, because it looks ridiculous. On to Mothra herself. Mothra will be much larger. As you can see, she's very small in the game compared to her appearance in the movies, especially in the Heisei film, which in turn will give her pretty useless grabs, more range. I'd also like to remove some of the abusable gimmicks in the game, like Mechagodzilla 2 is probably one of the cheapest strategies in the game. His beam can destroy health cells, and if you fly in the air and avoid him, you can just sort of spam your beam and win, and so that's pretty annoying. Megalon Baragon can dig underground forever for some reason. I don't know why they can. That is the dumbest thing ever. They can just time out their opponent and win. Also, Varan, all you have to do is grab over and over and over, and you'll win. That's going to go. Biollante, I don't know, man. While she's a bit of a punching bag, she can spam her sweep attacks, and honestly, I haven't decided on whether she needs 1 less health cell or less damage, or really anything at all. I don't want to mess with her too much because I really can't tell if she's a good fighter or not. When it comes to jumps, aside from a few characters, the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade jump height is gonna go. They'll have much more realistic jump height and falling speeds. The only exceptions being Mechagodzilla 2, Kiryu, Mothra, Megaguirus, Rodan, Ghidorah, Mechaghidorah, Biollante, Varan, Destroya, and Space Godzilla. Now, it seems like a lot, but the reasoning for keeping their high jump height should be pretty apparent. And with that, you have a balanced Godzilla Unleashed. Other plans for the future? Stuff I'm working on right now, actually, are alternate skins. I've already made a ton of skins you'll be able to choose from in the installer, but to actually choose them in-game from the roster menu, while difficult to implement, is definitely possible and would be really cool. Each monster is going to have a minimum of 4 skins to choose from. Like in Shin Godzilla, we'll have around 8, with 54, 60s, 70s, stuff like that. Godzilla 2000 has 2002, 2003, GMK Final Wars. Godzilla 90s has Burning Godzilla, the Comic-Con Burning Godzilla. New monsters. So this was the original concept art I made when I got the idea for this mod. It's a roster that has all the monsters I plan to implement. And all of the new monsters are clones of an existing monster. Now that I know my way around the game's files, adding new monsters seems pretty impossible. There's a lot of stuff I'd have to modify just to get it to work. But I won't give up trying. But right now, first thing I need to do is learn how to change the models of the monsters in the game, which brings me to changing Obsidius and Crystalak to King Kong and Zilla. And I have not found a way to change the in-game models. However, they have been ripped from the game. So if that's possible, someone must know how to do it. I gave up trying a while ago, and at this point, I'm so desperate that if someone figures out how to change models in the game, I'll straight up give them $100 through PayPal. Like, I don't even care at this point. So yeah, that's pretty much an update of where I am now. The first official release of the mod will be soon. I don't know how soon. It will only be available on Dolphin at this time. This is what the game looks like on Dolphin, and this is what the game will look like on the Wii. So, pretty big difference. I still have a lot of stuff to do to the Wii version before it's ready, such as actually implement the GameCube controllers. But until then, yeah, if you have any criticism, requests, suggestions, anything, please let me know. Everything in this video is subject to change, and I guarantee in the next video the game will be much different than it is now. So yeah, until then, this is Godzilla.